Welcome to our audience live and also to our live stream audience. Frank Scheide is our presenter tonight. He's a professor at the University of Arkansas where he teaches film history and criticism. Scheide received his PhD in communication arts at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where he wrote his dissertation on Charles Chaplin's background in English music hall theater. He has authored one textbook on film criticism, co-edited 2 Chaplin autobiographies, and lectured on silent film comedians in America and abroad. And you also have a Buster Keaton Film Festival. Is that every year? Yes, in Topeka? Iola, Kansas. Buster Keaton Film Festival, yearly in Iola, Kansas. He came highly recommended to me for this presentation, which I know you will all enjoy. So please help me welcome Frank Scheide.
Thank you. I never really considered doing a talk on A Christmas Carol before, so when I was asked to do it, I was pleasantly surprised. We come to Dickens from all sorts of different directions. Some of us actively pursue Dickens. Some of us are dragged to Dickens and find that we like him. And some just kind of stumble across him and we find we like him as well. And so this is a more modern technology since we're looking at the cinematic history of the Christmas Carol. This is more of a 19th century device. It was very complicated, and I substituted a picture from the Christmas Carol there that wasn't actually there, so it's been doctored. And so this is the different title that I came up with in order to start this. So, Charles Dickens and Christmas Carol, which he wrote in 1843. And this is an illustration from the original edition. It was in color, and it cost a fortune. It was a very revolutionary novella, as I shortly. And my particular interest in Dickens, I've never considered myself a Dickens scholar, but he's one of my favorite 19th century authors. Mark Twain and Dickens are my 2 favorites, primarily because they're both humorists and they go way beyond humor in terms of their technology. But as Kelly mentioned, I do work on Charlie Chaplin, and Charlie Chaplin was greatly influenced by Charles Dickens. And they were both Londoners. Dickens died during the Victorian period, and Charlie Chaplin was born towards the end of it. He was born in 1889, and Queen Victoria died in 1901. So he was, he would have been 12 years old when Queen Victoria died. And Chaplin, as a young boy, was the son of English music hall performers. And English music hall was the equivalent of vaudeville. And one of the people that he came in contact with when he was 10 years old in 1899 was a man by the name of Bransby Williams. And he had a long career. He ended up doing television. I believe he lived into the 1960s. And his particular performance that particularly impressed Chaplin and audiences was that he would do quick change in front of the audience and play Dickens's Bill Sikes. And so this is Bransby Williams making up, and this is the Bill Sikes character that he came up with. And young Charlie Chaplin was so impressed that he was doing impersonations based on Bransby Williams. And so this is Charlie Chaplin on the left, and this is what he looked like at the time he did that particular impersonation. He was 17 at this time. So he started doing impersonations of impersonators when he was 10 and was still fascinated with Dickens. He mentioned in his autobiography that he could barely read, but because of Bransby Williams, he bought a copy of Oliver Twist and became an avid reader and student of Dickens. And of course, his films are very Dickensian, and one of the most Dickensian was The Kid, made in 1921. January of this year was the 100th anniversary of that, so very Dickensian. So Dickens London and Charlie Chaplin's London, this is the Thames, and the tan area they've identified as Dickens London for some reason, even though there's all sorts of areas related to Dickens. You'll notice that at the top, the houses, those were places where Dickens lived at various times in his life. And we have the loop, and then underneath the loop, that was Charlie Chaplin's London. And so you see Waterloo Bridge Road, you see Lambeth below that, you see Bedlam, which is now the Imperial War Museum. Those were all part of Charlie Chaplin's London. And so one of the things that I've had the opportunity to do, because my wife is from London, is to visit Chaplin sites and in some cases Dickens sites. And one of the major sites, if you're a tourist and you want to get a overwhelming sense of English history, is Westminster Abbey. And so you can see Lambeth Palace along the Thames going up, Houses of Parliament, and then to the left, Westminster Abbey. And you have Vauxhall Bridge on this side and then straight above it. So Westminster Abbey was a landmark that both Chaplin and Dickens would have been very familiar with. So this is a older view of Westminster Abbey, and I chose this in part. This was even pre-Dickens, but it's hard to see where that is given the construction buildings around it. But this is the west side of Westminster Abbey, and this is a map. And so the west side, the Great West Door, and the nave, and then if you come through that and you see Poets' Corner, and that is a very ironic and fascinating place in terms of individuals. The first person to be buried there was Chaucer in 1400, and Poets' Corner grew up around him. But interestingly enough, he wasn't buried there because he was a poet. He was a clerk, and he was actually living at Westminster Abbey near the vicinity. So when he died, they buried him there. And 200 years later, they decided, Edmund Spenser died, and they said, well, why don't we bury him next to Chaucer? And then Poets' Corner suddenly developed. So was buried there, but not because he was a poet, because he had political connections. So ironic place. And so here is a map of Poets' Corner, and you see Chaucer is buried right here, and then Edmund Spenser was buried here. And interestingly enough, they said when Edmund Spenser died 200 years later, Shakespeare and Ben Jonson was supposedly in attendance, and they threw pens and poetry and different aspects of script in his tomb. So in 1938, they dug the tomb closest to it in hopes of finding Shakespeare's pen. Couldn't find anything. So they lost Spenser. He's somewhere in there, but they don't know where he is. So again, he was really responsible for Poets' Corner becoming Poets' Corner because he was the first, but certainly not the last. So then I'm just going to flip this in order to kind of get the context, because Chaucer over here, that's east side of the Abbey, and then you see right up above you have Shakespeare. Shakespeare's not buried there, but you have this collection of famous writers in that particular area, and so the reason I'm showing you this is because this was the first place I visited when I was a tourist. First time I visited London, 51 years ago, and just overwhelmed. Came in and, oh, there's Shakespeare and all these other individuals. And again, the people besides Shakespeare weren't buried there, but you have Dr. Johnson. The individual on the right I had never heard of before. That wasn't his fault, that was mine. James Thompson. And then I was curious, who is that underneath James Thompson? And again, another irony, it's the Bronte Sisters. And so, overshadowed by this guy that, I'd never heard of. And his clothing is, he didn't die during ancient Greek times, so it's kind of interesting that they had him like that. But again, the irony, we've got Jane Austen over there, but again, she's overshadowed, so one of the ironies. But again, I remember when I went there and, oh, there's Shakespeare, and there's Dr. Johnson, and then that window, underneath that's where Chaucer is. And I said to my friend, I said, that's Chaucer over there. And he said, yeah, and you're standing on Dickens. Oh my God, small G. I was standing on top of Dickens, and I jumped to the left because if I hadn't, I would have landed on Rudyard Kipling or Thomas Hardy. I mean, they're thicker than fleas there. And so that was my first really close encounter with Charles Dickens. Didn't see him when he was alive. I'd be in really horrible physical shape if I had, but I could say that I did stumble across him when I was in Westminster Abbey. But again, part of the irony, Charles Dickens, like Charlie Chaplin, his very early years were comfortable. Then, around the time he was 12, earlier for Chaplin, his father experienced financial difficulties, and he was put in debtor's prison. And young Dickens went from being in school, and he was working in a factory for 3 years, putting labels on blacking for polishing shoes. And he had to do that for 3 years, and so he really knew what it was like to be among the working poor. And he was horrified by the experience that his father, mother, and siblings had in debtor's prison, because they wouldn't just take the debtor, they would take the family. They spared him because he could work. And so that affected him for the rest of his life, the same way that Chaplin's poverty affected him. And interestingly enough, his father got out because Dickens' grandmother died and he got a legacy. And his mother said, well, Charles, why don't you continue working on the factory? You're bringing in money. And so he hated his mother after that and said it affected his relationship with women. So, we're all flawed. But so he had that particular experience. So I thought, here Dickens was. He was concerned about the downtrodden. And here he is lying in this place where who knows how many millions of people have trodden all over him. And turns out he didn't want to be buried there. He wanted to be buried in a quiet cemetery. And because of political reasons, he was buried there. And you had people like myself walking all over him, well-meaning, but not all that respectful. And so again, the irony of Dickens. And I was thinking about this idea of walking all over people. And the irony, what do kids do when they're growing up? They are criticized their entire lives by their parents. And then what do they do when they become 18? They go to places like the University of Arkansas, where they pay to have people like myself criticize them. And the University of Arkansas is unique in terms of the fact that not these people under the thumb, underfoot of administration. We have the senior walk where the alumni are underfoot, walked upon for all eternity, and students pay for that privilege. And so again, the irony of Dickens, and you look at Dickens' writing, you look at his experiences, and he just is so human, and he has so many different aspects that one can appreciate from one's own life. So, why did Dickens write Christmas Carol? He wrote it in 1843, and he was motivated by one major fact. He was broken. He needed the money. So he comes up with this idea. He'd been writing Martin Chuzzlewit at that time. He had successful novels prior to this, but Martin Chuzzlewit wasn't doing so well. And what Dickens would do is he would write chapters of his novels to be. They would be published in magazines. He would get paid by the word. And then after the final installment in the magazine, they'd be published as books. And so he needed money, and so he decided he wanted to write this novella and write it quickly. And so his publisher said, no, you can't do it. It's too short a time, and you can't do it. So he decided to self-publish. And instead of me talking all the time, you'll be relieved to know that you're going to be seeing film clips. And the first film clip you're going to see is from a film that was relatively recent. And it's in the library. It's The Man Who Invented Christmas, Charles Dickens. I bet you were surprised. I was certainly surprised. I never thought that he invented Christmas. I thought another person 2,000 years ago was responsible, but this is why we do this type of research. So I'm going to show you a clip from Charles Dickens and his inspiration and his experiences writing A Christmas Carol. It's been referred to as a Shakespeare in Love version of Charles Dickens. So we'll see if this works.
Hello, I'm Christopher Plummer, and I'm so excited to be sharing this new trailer for my upcoming movie, The Man Who Invented Christmas, which is coming to theaters everywhere this Thanksgiving. I hope so much that you'll like it, and if you don't, humbug to you.
God bless us, everyone. Follow.
Humbug.
So he's had a couple of flops? Well, who hasn't?
You have a new book in mind?
Oh, of course he does.
My lamp's gone out. I've run out of ideas.
Are we in trouble?
No, of course not.
I have told you not to disturb me when I am working.
On Christmas Eve, the spirits pour into the night.
Look here, Mr. Dickens. Pickpockets, streetwalkers, humbug. Those people don't belong in books.
Charles!
It's about a miser, and on Christmas Eve, he meets some kind of supernatural guides.
Does it have a title?
Humbug, A Miser's Lament. Christmas ghost story, Christmas song, Christmas ballad, something like that.
Get the name right, and the character will appear. Scratch, Scrounger. Come on, Scrooge.
Shut the window. You think I'm made of money?
Mr. Scrooge, how delightful to meet you, sir.
Sorry, I can't say the same.
You and I are going to do wonderful things together.
How do you make a world come alive? I could almost see and hear them people.
Even if you'd already written it, we couldn't possibly get it printed and distributed in only 6 weeks.
If I can't finish it, I'll never write again.
The characters won't do what I want.
I'm the author here.
Allegedly.
A jolly ghost.
What's that mean?
In the season of hope, we will shut out nothing, and everyone will be welcome.
I have to get to the printers by 9 o'clock.
But you still don't have an ending.
Merry, Merry Christmas to one and all. That's enough. Back to work.
God bless us, everyone.
Okay, so The Man Who Invented Christmas. So it's obviously fictionalized, but different critics have looked at this is true and this isn't. One thing that one critic indicated that Dickens would do is that he would read the dialogue, speak the dialogue of his characters, and so would interact with them. And at one time, he was considering going into theater, and he actually auditioned, was going to audition, got a cold, and he couldn't make it. And by the time he was called back, his writing career took off. So he was very theatrical. He would do readings of his work, and so that aspect of theater was something that he would bring to his work. And the name of this movie was actually based on this book, which I got. Just came in the mail today, and I said, "Oh, this looks interesting." So it's here. I haven't read it. I haven't even opened it up, obviously. But The Man Who Invented Christmas, and so it just describes how and why Dickens was responsible for the Christmas tradition. What had happened was that Christmas had it was observed, but it wasn't observed as strongly as it would be after 1843. And Dickens wasn't the only person who invented Christmas, but there was other major events that were converging. So Queen Victoria's husband, Prince Albert, was from Germany, and in 1841 he brought the first Christmas tree from Germany to England. And the same year that A Christmas Carol came out, the very first Christmas card, and this is it. And this was inspired in part by penny postcards. They had just been developed because of innovations in printing. And so this man was thinking, okay, I can't see all my friends. I'll send them a card acknowledging the season. And so with Christmas Carol, Christmas trees, and Christmas cards, you've got the foundation for Christmas taking off. As I mentioned, Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol with the idea of making money, but he was so concerned about the quality of the book that he spent a fortune on it. So didn't like certain illustrations, the one page wasn't quite. So by the time he made all the alterations, the book was so expensive that he was expecting to make £1,000 plus. He made less than £200, so it was a wash that way. However, it sold out and it was a big hit. And the next edition, which a publisher picked up on, just took off, and so it was immediately recognized as the classic that it's seen as today. So you had the novel being read, and you had stage productions being done relatively quickly. And Dickens wasn't as excited about those because a lot of them were done without his authorization. And so he was involved with stage productions, and this was another common thing. Novels would be quickly turned into stage productions. And the Scrooge and Christmas Carol on stage became a annual tradition. And in 1900, there was a major development in terms of the Christmas Carol for the stage and ultimately the screen. So this man, Seymour Hicks, would be responsible for defining the Christmas Carol and would be seen as the main Scrooge delineator for really the first half of the 20th century. So according to his autobiography in 1910, in 1900, he had an appendicitis attack, was thinking about Christmas Carol. He notes and gave them to a colleague by the name of J.C. Barstock, and Barstock worked out a narrative which became a 45-minute Christmas play, Christmas Carol. And 1901, Seymour Hicks performed this command performance for King Edward. So 1901 was the year that Queen Victoria died. Edward was still in mourning, and Hicks was invited to Sandringham, and they actually put on a full stage production of A Christmas Carol. That same year, amazingly enough, a film version was made, 1901, again by Barstock, and that it's not complete, but the film still exists, and hopefully we'll be able to access this here. This one's online. And a couple of things before we see if it works. The famous door knocker is a really key aspect of A Christmas Carol, because that's when Scrooge starts to hallucinate or has his visions. And that particular door knocker was actually based on a door knocker that Dickens saw, and instead of a lion, it was a human's face. And so he got that idea, and that aspect of the transformation of the door knocker in stage productions and film is like one of the key special effects that they were going for, and still, you know, key in terms of making that transition from the quote-unquote real world to the spiritual world. And so this is called Marley's Ghost. It doesn't star Seymour Hicks, but it was essentially other people associated with that particular production. So we will see if this works. I'm sorry about that. It doesn't look like. That particular link is going to. No. Okay. Well, I've only got one other clip, so if something didn't work, that's the best thing that would happen. Okay, so again, Marley's Ghost. You gonna give it a try here? Yeah, okay. Okay, please.
It just isn't. So when you're clicking on that, it isn't doing anything for you. Let's see if I can open it in a new window, but it doesn't look like it's doing
It's
anything.
not even
here.
going to the.
No, it's not. I do not know.
Well, the other thing is we could go to the. We could go to the net, and I could pull it up that way.
So maybe. maybe
Yeah,
your
why
best
don't
bet.
we try that?
Just zoomed in.
Okay, zoomed in. Okay. Okay. Okay, we will we'll see if I can really mess it up, and we'll go to the internet and see if I can pull it up on YouTube. Yeah. Help if I could spell. Okay. Now, we tend to look at these old films and go, aren't they crude compared to what we have now? But theater historians are fascinated with this material because this is the set that would have been, people would have seen in 1901. And so this is very similar to what those very early audiences of Seymour Hicks's celebrated production would have seen. that was added later. Okay, here we have the famous door knocker. And and another interesting thing is the placement. Usually the placements are like in a theater, and you just have the long shot, but the fact that they had a tighter placement, that was very unusual. This is really early 1901. You know, this type of situation would be closer to what you would see, you know, 4 or 5 years later. And again, the black allows the so-called special effects here. So this is on the stage where they would have the using slide projectors for spirit photography, if you will, or spirit projection. And this is a abridged version of seeing the entire, yeah, you don't need to read the story now, you're getting it all now in this definitive 1901 abridged version. Still gets a laugh after all those years. 120. Wow. Oh, there's Scrooge. Graveside scene. Okay. So we made that work. We'll see if I can get back into what I was doing. That's not too bad. Okay. So, again, Seymour Hicks would have been involved with that type of staging and that type of production. Interestingly enough, he made a film version in 1913. And so, same issue here, I assume, and actually this is the only other clip that I'm getting offline, so we'll see if that one was an anomaly or if this is the norm here. And okay, same situation. So we will see if we can have success twice with the Google. Okay. That is not, I have lost my, there it is, okay. It is not allowing a video to come up. Try one more thing. No, this is this is text rather than film. See if Wikipedia accidentally allows us into the film. Again, that's not happening. So, one thing that you... Oh, wait a minute. Okay. That's the full film. Okay, here.
What's the difference between your lawn and a true green lawn?
Apologize for the ad, but... Okay, so this is Seymour Hicks. And this would have been 12 years after he did his command performance for the king. And this is also Marley's ghost sequence. And the segment I would have shown you is there's all sorts of text saying what a nasty person he is. And they said he was such an ogre that the children wanted to throw snowballs at him. And so he gets pelted with snowballs, and they said, oh, well, they shouldn't. And so some extra stuff that Dickens hadn't thought of. Another, okay, so you got a sense of the 1913 Seymour Hicks. One thing I didn't mention that I should relative to what Dickens did. I said he did it for the money, but he didn't do it just for the money. He could have written something that was treacle, and while there's very sugary versions of Christmas Carol, a lot of it is very hard biting in terms of this is the 1913 version. Dickens was very much concerned about making a narrative that talked about the poor and the underprivileged and those people that were having incredibly difficult times. And so Marley, when he visits, as you know, is saying, oh, I could have helped people and I didn't do it. And in the one illustration, you see ghosts and you see this woman in the street, on the sidewalk, holding her child in the cold weather. So Seymour Hicks did this 1913 version. And then, interestingly enough, he did another version in 1935. The first major talking version of A Christmas Carol. And again, Seymour Hicks reprising that role, now 35 years after he originally got the idea. And we'll see if this works. This is a colorized version of a black and white film.
May I inquire, Mr. Cratchit, what you're doing with that shovel full of coal?
Why, I beg your pardon, sir, but the outer office is intensely cold, and my fire...
Your fire?
I should have said your fire, sir.
Yes, sir.
It shows symptoms of going out, and I thought I might venture to replenish it with a small quantity of coal.
Yes. Well, of course, it's very evident to me, Mr. Cratchit, that you and I left apart. Oh, I see no help for it, sir. You don't pay for the coal, so you can afford to be reckless. Therefore, very evident to me, sir, that my interest is not your interest. Nor my welfare, your welfare. Get on with your work, sir. That'll keep you warm enough. I'm not cold. Why should you be? And I'm your senior by a great many years, I fancy.
And all about a small shovel full of coal.
None of your mumbling, none of your mumbling. You have a wife and family to support, I understand.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. How many children have you got?
Around half dozen, sir. 3 boys and 3 girls.
Tut, tut, tut. Can I afford a wife?
Yes, sir.
Eh?
I mean, no, sir.
Have I any children?
I don't know, sir.
Eh?
No, sir.
How much am I constrained to pay you a week for your services?
15 shillings, sir.
Be to your interest, sir, to see that you're worth it.
Yeah. Good performance. Yeah, it's well worth seeing. 1935, and you can see why. I mean, his acting style is not dated in terms of he's a very convincing Scrooge. And so again, he set the standard for the first half of the 20th century. So this came out in 35, not to be outdone. In 1938, Hollywood thought, okay, we need to show that we can do Dickens. We've done David Copperfield. We need to do A Christmas Carol. So this is a trailer for the 1938 version by MGM.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I've been assigned one of the most pleasant tasks I've ever known. I'm going to introduce to you a character I've loved for many years. Strangely enough, when you first meet him, you're going to loathe the very sight of him. He's mean and grasping. He's hard-hearted and tight-fisted. As miserable an old windbag as ever faked a sneeze when the collection plate goes by. He'll probably remind many of you of your landlord. But you, as I did, and millions before us, are going to grow to love him. Hesitantly, at first, I'll admit, but finally he'll overwhelm your heart and be off with it. His name is Scrooge, the famous Dickens character, Ebenezer Scrooge of A Christmas Carol. Old Scrooge is played on screen by Reginald Owen. And Reginald is old Scrooge, just exactly as Dickens conceived him, and as you and your children know him and love him.
Lionel Barrymore, I'm sure if you've seen It's a Wonderful Life, you'll recognize Potter, curmudgeon, talking about a curmudgeon. So, very fitting that he was introducing that. I imagine he would like to have played the Scrooge himself, but one would wonder if he could be redeemed. So I think there might have been some questions about casting. Again, you've got the Seymour Hicks in England being identified with the role, and you have that movie. And then in 1951, you have Alistair Sim doing Scrooge. Alistair Sim was a comedian, dramatic actor, had this kind of nervous energy, was in at least one Hitchcock film. And this was the version that a lot of people in England would think of in terms of, the definitive Scrooge. It was 16 years after the 35 version, so production values the technology and production values were substantially different. And Alistair Sim was able to bring his own character to the role, and so rather than imitating Seymour Hicks. So we'll see the trailer for this.
Not unless you give me more time.
Did I ask you for more time to lend you the money?
Oh, no, sir.
Then why should you ask me for more time to pay it back?
Hard and sharp as flint he was. You ask Bob Cratchit about him. This timid and intimidated little clerk is portrayed by Mervyn John. Mrs. Cratchit by Hermione Baddeley. The little lame boy, the great-hearted Tiny Tim, is played by Glyn Dearman. Michael Hordern gives a spirited portrayal of Jacob Marley, the ghost who changes Scrooge from sinner to saint. Co-starring with Alistair Sim in delightful character roles are Jack Warner and Kathleen Harrison.
Don't be violent, Mr. Scrooge, sir. You forced me to scream for the beadle.
The beadle, madam? A thief for the beadle.
A guinea? Here, what for?
Absurd to be so happy.
So, I'm going to skip a decade. The 1960s associated with the Beatles. Don't know of a Beatles Christmas Carol. So we get to the 1970s, and we have more versions of Christmas Carol and Scrooge. We're starting to get revisionists now. So this is Albert Finney's version in 1970. It was directed by Clive Donner, and interestingly enough, he was the editor on the Alistair Sim version. So I think I'm right about that. He was, I think that was the case. He might have been the George C. Scott, but we have some carryover here. So this version is quite a bit different. Finney's age allowed him to play both the young Scrooge and the old Scrooge. So you could do the romantic interest part of the story and also be the old codger. So, revisionist Christmas Carol.
That's Father Christmas. A plague of Father Christmas. I'm back. I hate people. A lot of humbug. There is no such thing as rich enough. Please, I beg you. I will repent. You don't believe in me, do you? No, I don't.
We are going to look at your past.
There are more good things in this life, Scrooge, than you can possibly imagine.
It's Christmas, Ebenezer. Dear boy, let's go and open the toy shop. I've discovered that I like life.
God bless us, everyone.
Okay, that's needless to say a 50th anniversary trailer, updated for a different market. Okay, so this wasn't the only version of Scrooge or A Christmas Carol that came out in the 1970s. There was another version which I have some difficulty just embracing the concept. So Fonzie as Scrooge, 1979, An American Christmas Carol. So, I mean, you're sticking an American as well as Fonz, and I just really had a hard time. Okay, I need to be thorough, look at all these, and to give you some idea how I struggled with this, I'm into old technology, so when I knew I was going to do this particular project, so I need to see these versions, and I prefer DVD. So I went all over town, and I got every version of DVD that and I was able to find, sometimes it's the only copy, but I found copies of all these, including this one. It was at Barnes & Noble, my head, and I left it there, and okay, I need to go back and get it. And so, it was a ABC Sunday night movie, and it was, it says, it's an excellent version of the Dixon classic. Henry Winkler is excellent as 20th Century Scrooge. So it got good reviews, but I just thought, okay, it's going to be one of two things. It's going to be way too sentimental, or it's just going to be bizarre. But it is, Henry Winkler is a serious actor. He's been trying to, get past Fonzie. You never will, but he's done all sorts of things, and it is an interesting dramatic story set in the 30s, and so you have an embittered man who is got a pawn shop, and he's one of the few people that has money in a particular community, and so it's still strange, but I mean it is worth a look. But again, if you're looking for the standard, particularly 19th century, no. And so I don't have a trailer for this, unfortunately, but I'll leave it to your imagination, and you can take it where you will. Okay, the next version of Christmas Carol that came out that is identified by critics. This one came out in 1983, and that was Mickey's Christmas Carol. Again, I don't have a trailer for this, but you have Goofy as Marley, and you have Mickey as Bob Cratchit, and Scrooge McDuck as Uncle Scrooge. So again, a Christmas classic, and this was the first movie that Mickey had actually played a part in some years, because he was busy being the trademark of Disney, and so he was keeping kind of low profile. The early Mickey Mouse was just really ugly and violent, just a Mickey rat. And then as he evolved, he became more wholesome, I guess. And so then they brought in Donald Duck, who had anger management problems, and so he had the issues, antisocial characteristics that. But at any rate, it's interesting. The next version of Christmas Carol that is very respected and well worth seeing, it's another made-for-television movie, George C. Scott. And I do have a trailer for this one. It's 1984.
It's Christmas, a time for celebration. A time of goodwill to all men. All, that is, except one.
Elizabeth with means.
should make some slight provision for the poor and destitute.
Ebenezer Scrooge, a man whose contempt for others,
Mr. Cratchit,
is matched only by his greed and lust for wealth.
Christmas comes but once a year, sir. Poor excuse. Picking a man's pocket every 25th of December.
But Scrooge is about to be taught a lesson he'll never forget.
You will be haunted by 3 spirits. I think I'd rather not.
Charles Dickens' immortal tale is brought to life as you've never seen it before.
I am the ghost of Christmas past. You will see yourself.
Ebenezer Scrooge!
You are more worthless and less fit to live than millions like this poor man's child.
I fear you more than any spectre I've seen. I will not be the man I must have been but for this visitation. Why show me this if I am past all hope?
Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, with an all-star cast including Frank Finney, David Warner, Susanna York, Edward Woodward, Nigel Davenport, Joanne Whalley, and George C. Scott as Ebenezer Scrooge. A Christmas Carol.
Merry Christmas to everybody, and a Happy New Year to the world!
Okay, that one is not revisionist. If you want to see a relatively recent update of this type of movie that they were doing in the 30s and the 50s, this is the one to see. Okay, the next one is revisionist. This is from 1988. And so we'll get right to the trailer.
7 o'clock. Psycho sees Santa's workshop, and only Lee Majors can stop them. In the night the reindeer died. Be here.
You can't show that commercial. That's a family Christmas special.
I think I'm way off base.
Yes, you're a tad off base, sir.
Frank Cross is more than the youngest network president in television history.
Call security, have them change his locks, and toss him out of the building.
Oh, he's fired? It's Christmas.
Thank you. Call accounting. Stop his bonus. Oh, watch out.
He's a thoughtful boss,
Thanks, boys. Get the nurse.
a generous brother,
What did he give you last year?
I don't remember. A shower curtain. Ma'am, I think you dropped something here.
and a true humanitarian.
I can't get the antlers glued onto this little guy. We've tried crazy glue.
Have you tried Staples?
But his life is about to change.
Woo-wee! That was a good one.
You are going to be visited by 3 ghosts tomorrow at noon.
God, tomorrow's bad for me, Lou. As a matter of fact, the whole rest of the week is a washout.
Anyone who thinks he hates Christmas is wrong.
Go back to Jersey, you moron!
It's ghosts he hates.
I love that bit!
I'm the ghost of Christmas present.
Bill Murray, Karen Allen,
It sounded like you'd seen a ghost.
a ghost, John Forsythe, Bobcat Goldthwait,
Hey! You glad to see me, or is this a shotgun in your pocket? You know this one?
Everybody knows this one. Let's go now.
How does everybody know this one?
Carol Kane, Robert Mitchum,
I really care!
David Johansen.
Oh, I'm having the weirdest day!
See Bill Murray get Scrooged.
Hey, back off, big man. That may work with the chicks, but not with me.
One question is, can this person ever be redeemed? And do we care? I mean, Scrooge's jerk and see him get beat up on the screen. That isn't everybody's Christmas Carol in the after 1988. Again, this is not something that you'd want to show little kids in terms of getting them into the Christmas spirit and Christmas Carol. So we have this particular classic, and one of the places where I bought DVDs, they said there's only one Christmas Carol, it's the Muppets, and so with Michael Caine playing it straight as Scrooge, and here's the trailer for this, 1992.
Humbug. He was the greediest man alive.
It's Ebenezer Scrooge.
Until the night he married.
Hello.
The Muppet Christmas Carol.
I'll drink to Mr. Scrooge, even though he is odious and stingy and badly dressed.
Humbug.
Oh, there goes Mr. Humbug. There goes Mr. Grin.
Do you think it's safe for us to be up here?
They gave a prize for being mean. The winner would be him.
Yes, Mr. Cratchit.
If you please, Mr. Scrooge, the bookkeeping staff would like to have an extra shovel full of coal for the fire.
Such a frozen.
How would the bookkeepers like to be suddenly
Unemployed! He waved. Oi! This is my island in the sun.
It's Charles Dickens' classic tale, as only the Muppets can tell it.
It's good to be heckling again.
It's good to be doing anything again.
Filled with holiday warmth
Hey, like the lamb, not the rat, like the lamb, not the rat.
and Christmas spirit.
Jacob Marley?
Oh, that's scary stuff. Hey, should we be worried about the kids in the audience?
No, it's all right. This is culture.
This is the movie to see, to share, to cherish with someone you love.
Thank you for making me a part of this.
Walt Disney Pictures presents from Jim Henson Productions, The Muppet Christmas Carol.
God bless us, everyone.
Whatever.
This one, okay, we'll go back to that before I get to the next one. This was made after Jim Henson had died, and his son produced it. I was surprised to read that it wasn't commercially successful, but it certainly has been a cult classic since then. And Disney released it, and then later, as we know, took over the Muppets, and so for the 50th anniversary release, this was a Disney production. The next Disney involvement with Christmas Carol, this is not a beloved classic. Well, we'll look at the trailer and then deal with it accordingly.
What do you want with me?
You will be haunted by 3 spirits. I'd rather not. I am the ghost of Christmas past.
Haunt me no longer!
If you were given a second chance to get your life right, this holiday season, the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future
Get away! Get away!
will give one man that chance. This November, Walt Disney Pictures and Image Movers Digital invite you to experience the classic tale like you've never seen it before in Disney Digital 3D and IMAX 3D.
Humbug.
Disney's A Christmas Carol.
This was 2009, and Jim Carrey wasn't the only thing that was the issue. It's interesting that one of the big things they were pushing was this revolutionary technique in animation, which doesn't date well at all. So what we've got now is zombie Scrooge, I think, and it just kind of comes across as creepy. So it doesn't date well. In the blurb for this talk, it said, from the origins to 2019, and a series, and this was going to be a fun production. I'm not showing you a clip from this because this is not fun. This is Scrooge without, you talk about too much treacle. There's no treacle at all. It's all pill and no sugar. So this is industrial Britain. Scrooge is a industrial mogul, just ugly, evil people are the horrors of Dickens without any of the redeeming black comedy and sense of humor and humanity. It's just yeah. So this is one to see on your own. I'm not going to show you a clip. But I will show you another film, a clip from 2019, Second Chance for Christmas. Are any of you familiar with this? Okay. Okay. we saw this with Bill Murray already. It's Scrooge's Diva. And so we now have a female Scrooge. She is a rock star. She doesn't do art. She doesn't get along with her family. She has all sorts of issues, and she is visited by her dead rock star grandfather as a Marley replacement. And instead of being visited by angels in her bedroom, she is visited by two guys in their 50s in a bar. So we got a trailer for this one, so you can see what you take from this.
And you held me by the fire with the lights hung on the tree when everything was perfect, just you and me. Okay, I can't hear my vocals, so can we pump those up a little bit?
Here we go, set. For superstar Chance Love.
Here you go.
Mom, I swear that is the last time I sing that stupid Christmas song.
Looking out for number one.
Oh, cancel my flight home.
Is all that matters.
Say hi to my daughter. Take me home already.
But when an uninvited guest.
I got you your kale smoothie right here.
Thank you.
Pays her a visit. She'll get a second chance. Chance! To turn her life around.
Change your ways, you're gonna end up like me.
A rock star?
No, doomed! Tonight, you will be visited by 3 spirits.
This is your childhood home. Oh, hey, look, a second chance.
So are you the entitled rich girl?
Excuse me?
Shut up on this ride. Baby, I'm the ghost of Christmas present.
You're the ghost of Christmas presents?
Present.
Did you die at Comic-Con? You hear me?
Chill out.
Girl, you must have seriously screwed up.
Are you perfect?
I'm an angel.
Second chance for Christmas.
Okay, all right. Just hold on. You...
Pretty scary, right?
There was definitely something in that smoothie.
So I don't know if that's on your bucket list, but it's out there. So, which brings us to back to Dickens.
"'Twas the holiday season and joy filled the town, except for Scrooge, with his perma-frown. The gift of a Peloton bike did touch his soul, riding proud, getting hella swole.
You can do it! I'm doing it!
Was Scrooge a new man? Oh, without doubt. When your workout's a joy, it's a joy to work out.
I'm not endorsing that product. So we've got Christmas is Conspicuous Consumption. Thank you. I don't know if you have questions.
George C. Scott version is probably the most accurate movie version?
The 35 version is very good. And one of the interesting things about it, I didn't mention at the time, but Seymour Hicks, the Marley's ghost is invisible. And it's him essentially just acting in space. And again, you've got a sense of really subtle performance. And so that's very good. The George C. Scott is very good. The 1938 MGM version is pretty good as well, yeah. The 51 version, I like Alistair Sim, but he's well, Scrooge is manic, but he comes across as a bit manic. I kind of think of the Mad Hatter when I see him. But George C. Scott is yeah, he's excellent. He goes from being George Patton, General George Patton, to General Buck Turgis from Dr. Strangelove, if you remember. He's got that. And one of the things about Dickens is that that cartoonish aspect. And you read the lines; they're absolutely hilarious. And George C. Scott is those are the lines very often. I'm sure there's variations, but it's very true to the yeah. Certainly, in terms of that's 1984, but I can't think of anything since then that really comes close to being able to capture that kind of 19th century feeling and being really true to a lot of the nuance of the novella. Yeah.
There's a Patrick Stewart one, but I have not seen that one. It's one of the only modern ones.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one either. I have to confess. I looked at a lot of stuff, but that one slipped by. Yeah. I would assume it's okay, but again, I kind of worry about treacly, saccharine versions of Christmas Carol. So, but I don't know if it is or not. It's just but I don't know about that one. Yeah. Yeah.
So what versions do you watch every December?
Oh. I really don't, to tell you the truth. Yeah, I just, I like it, but I don't go out of my way to see them. And I enjoyed this opportunity to go back and look at them. I think I saw probably the Seymour Hicks, maybe the MGM version in the 50s. And I think it was probably the Seymour Hicks one because I think it was already in public domain. And so it got shown on television. And it really pulled me in. I really liked it, and I hadn't. If I did see it then, I hadn't seen it since I revisited it this time. But yeah, that worked really well for me, and yeah, and would have been the first Dickens type of narrative that I saw. I read classic illustrated comic books of David Copperfield and things like that, but yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes?
Have you seen the Theater Square that's going to be playing in the library?
Not this year. I saw it last year, yeah. So, yeah. So, yeah.
Good job.
Yeah. So if you want the traditional, working with the nuance, yes, definitely. Theater Squared is not revisionist in terms of Bill Murray and Jim Carrey. Yeah. Yeah.
Personally, I think Michael Caine doesn't get enough credit for the Muppet, you know. I just think if you take all of the Muppets out, himself is just excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
It's his best role as far as I'm concerned.
They were thinking about another Muppet, and it wouldn't have worked. I mean, they really needed, and he said, "I'm going to play it totally straight." And whereas George C. Scott, he obviously went cartoonish because he needed to do that variation. But Michael Caine was aware, okay, we've already got the cute with the Muppets, and so I'm going to have to be the salt to their sugar. And he's been in a lot of lousy movies, but he's always good. Yeah. Not to say that was one, but he's really good actor. Yeah. And you're right. It's Muppets, but it's like it wouldn't be what it is without Michael Caine.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for being a great audience and putting up with revisionist Scrooge here. So, okay, thank you. Thank you. And if anybody wants to look at this book about the man who invented Christmas, it's a fascinating concept that Dickens had such an impact on Christmas as a tradition. Yeah.
Well, don't you think that it's interesting based on the medieval, they celebrated all the music and all of that, and I guess they just lost it, through the years.
Well, they had the quote unquote pagan celebration at that time, and then the Christmas kind of got connected with that, and then as the pagan kind of died out, then they were replacing it with the more Christian components. Yeah. But it was interesting. I always thought that it was celebrated to a fairly substantial degree, but again, I have to look at this closer. Hadn't really considered this, but they said that really it wasn't being recognized nearly in the way that one would think it would be until after the 1840s. Yeah.
A Victorian Christmas is a whole concept now,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, again, they're starting at, Christmas starts on December 26th in terms of preparing for the next year. So it's yeah. I remember the big thing was Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and Santa would appear, and then Christmas would officially start. But no, it's starting now before Halloween. So, and but with global warming, it's kind of hard to tell where the seasons are anyway. So I guess you might as well be ready. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And definitely see the Theater Squared version of Christmas Carol for sure.
That newest version, the newest movie version that was